Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the HHR Subcommittee of Senate Finance. I'm Senator Emmett Hanger. I co-chair this subcommittee with our Finance and Appropriations Committee Chair, Janet Howe. We are both here today, and we've established a quorum. We're here today to look just at bills that have been referred to our subcommittee so that we can make recommendations to the full committee. We'll have other presentations and hear other matters at a couple of our future meetings, but today we have, I believe, 10 bills on our docket, and we will confine our attention today to those 10 bills that have been referred to us for recommendations. Any member have any comments or questions before we begin? I would say that we do have this subcommittee is hearing bills that have already been heard in other committees before they were referred to us. So it is our plan today not to take public testimony. We do have, though, online lots of experts from the various agencies that have a portion of the service delivery responsibilities for the Health and Human Resources area. So we will be able to draw on their knowledge for information that might be needed as well. And hearing no other thoughts from staff, the first bill that we have on our docket today is Senate Bill 1102, Senator Locke, Personal Care Aids. Senator Locke, are you prepared to present your bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1102 addresses the issue of home care workers, and essentially, there's a substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have the substitute? Is it online, or do we have copies for here?
It should be available.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lisa. I'm posting it online as we speak.
You say it is online?
I am posting it. It is currently pending. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's give a moment for the members to take a look at that.
And Mr. Chair, I also am happy to point out the differences, or Senator Locke could as well, while we wait for that to post.
Okay, Senator Locke, we do have that. Let me see. I'm not seeing this. Mike, do we have the substitute? You guys copies? Okay. It didn't pop up on my computer yet.
I know. So I'm sorry. Sometimes the system takes a minute. It's been sent. I'm happy. The changes, they aren't that substantial.
Do you want staff to share the differences?
Yeah, the only difference is that this one removes the word mandatory for DMAS to address the issue for the recruitment and retention for home care workers, as opposed to what the original did. Did I address that correctly, Lisa?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think that addresses a concern that had been raised as far as keeping clearly separate the responsibilities or the oversight from DMAS, I believe, so that they would not be construed to be employees. Is that right, Mike?
Mr. Chairman, so I think the substitute in front of you basically kind of takes it to the lower end of the fiscal impact, because it can be offered virtually and it's not mandatory. The concern about the state being an employer of record, the only thought that I had on that phrase is we could add a sentence that basically just gives DMAS the option to contract with another agency to actually do the program, to try to address that as well. But but other than that, it's fine.
Senator Locke, would you be amenable?
And I talked about that, and that's fine.
Senator Howe, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to suggest we do that. So
okay.
It sounds like we're all in agreement.
Okay, so I think we have basic consensus here, and we do have at least one member online. Senator Vogel, are you there? She might be also participating at another committee right now. I think we have consensus. It appears we have consensus on the substitute with the amendment that staff has suggested with a clarifying amendment. Let's just get a sense. Okay, we've got additional members here now. There was you offered that as a motion, Senator Howe? Yes, I did. Okay, conceptually, is there a second to that? Is there a second? Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor then of favorably reporting this to the full committee conceptually with the amendment that was offered to the substitute, signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay. Senator Loftus, we will recommend passage of that, and that will be drawn for presentation tomorrow morning. Is that correct, Mike? Okay. All right. That will be on the docket for the full committee meeting tomorrow morning. I guess I'll go down the list here now. Senator Suderline, is Senator Suderline online?
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You have Senate Bill 1133, which parallels Senator Mason's Senate Bill 1313. Do you want to speak to your bill now?
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So the primary there's multiple differences between Senator Mason's approach in Senate Bill 1313 and mine in Senate Bill 1133. But the primary differences, or at least that are most significant to me also, is my bill's inclusion of post-transition services after a student transitions to a public school setting, and a separate pilot program, which is something that you've heard me advocate for several years for. Whatever vehicle is used, I hope that the post-transition services and the long-awaited pilot program are included. In my bill, it allows for CSA funds to be used for any identified ongoing services a student may need after the transition to a public school. This will successfully implement JLARC's recommendation number 3 and avoid putting our schools and students in a position to fail if they don't have the specific funding to ensure long-term success after such a placement. Senator Mason's approach only includes the transition services. Both of us include the transition services, but it's important to have the funding for post-transition services. Without guaranteed funding for that, this specific population of students, we're going to see a lot of them unnecessarily placed back in the private day schools because it's such a key component to the whole discussion. The other big one that you've heard me talk about for several years is the pilot program. Senator Mason has the work group approach, which I appreciate his generosity in including things there, but I think it's important to have a pilot program. That way we can gather the additional specific data that we've been asking for several years. And in the past, we were told we needed the JLARC report. We now have that. It also is encouraging on it. And these two items are very important to me, and also several of the advocacy groups that several of you have heard from, including the Disability Law Center of Virginia, the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, the ARC of Virginia, VA Access, and the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Richmond. So whatever vehicle is used, I hope that those two items can be included, and I appreciate your opportunity to present that.
Thank you. Across the hall? Okay.
I think it'd be good to hear both.
Right. I think we should address it. Senator Howell, one of the thoughts that I had in discussing this with Mike earlier is that it appeared that there's some potential work that needs to be done to both bills. And of course, the thing that would be significantly different is the fact that Senator Suderline wants to advance a pilot program in Roanoke County. And it may be that we need to defer final action on this, with your permission, until our next full meeting, not tomorrow, but the following week. But we can certainly hear Senator Mason's presentation as well, so that Mike will know how he can help us put this together. Senator Suderline, would you, if we, and we're not making a decision right now except conceptually, but would you be opposed to rolling your bill into Senator Mason's, or being a joint patron, even if we don't move the pilot program forward this year?
I would not be interested in that then.
You would not want your
Yeah, those two components are very critical from my point of view, and I hope it'll be something that you all will act favorably on.
Okay. I think
don't share my view on that and don't advance it. I'd rather not.
Okay, I understand you very clearly, and I think we'll have a week that we can reflect on that, and we'll have further conversations between now and then. But what we're going to do at this point is hold your bill aside, and we'll hear a presentation either now or a little later in our meeting from Senator Mason, but we will not be taking final action on either bill until next Monday. If that's...
All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the full committee chairman as well.
Okay, thank you, Senator Suderline. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Barker, didn't see you sneak in?
Yeah, I went behind you, so. One of the issues I think we need to look at here is to make sure that we're not double counting money going to the school divisions. If a school division is going to be receiving money from CSA for services, it seems to me that we would have to not then count those services as cost to be incurred by that school division from regular sources to be able to then feed into the re-benchmarking that we do every 2 years. So it seems to me that if we allowed them to fully count all the expenses that they incurred in providing these services to go to the re-benchmarking, and then got additional money from the CSA outside of that, that would be in effect paying twice for the same service. And so I think we need to make sure that if we're going to move either of these bills forward, that we need to make sure that we take account of that and deduct these, basically not allow the counting of these expenses towards the re-benchmarking if we're going to be able to, if we're going to pay for it separately as well.
Okay, good. I do believe that the additional week will help us on both of these bills. So if the committee's in concurrence with that, we will hold Senator Suderline's bill aside, and we will hear Senator Mason. If you're just in time, if you would like to talk to us right now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, what we basically have just done, Senator Suderline had his bill, and he was online and presented his bill to us. And we know that his has a couple components that are not embraced in your bill, including a pilot program in Roanoke County. So we'd like to hear your bill, and we've concluded already that it probably will take us another week to put all this together, since it's a fairly significant change and direction for us. So if you could make your presentation now, that would be helpful.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for being late. I had a bunch of proxies.
Just on time.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Chairman, yes, there are some substantial differences, and I would assume Senator Suderline pointed them out to you. My bill incorporates the most JLARC recommendations into any. He had some specific ones, largely being trying to use the CSA money in the schools now, okay? That is not the direction I've taken. I have taken recommendations 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. You'll find 7 on line 14. You know what, Mr. Chairman, let me just make sure that my numbers still match up. And they do, yes, sir. I beg your pardon. Recommendation number 7, you'll find on line 14 and 15. That says that we're not paying CSA money to licensed private day schools. I think we were all kind of surprised to find that we were doing so, and so that says we've worked with VML and VACO on that, and that's another thing, Mr. Chairman. We have kind of taken all comers here, including Senator Stewart, Senator Peake, and Senator Suderline, to try to see. We may have tried to do a little too much for too many people, quite frankly, but we've worked with a bunch of folks along the way, and VML and VACO particularly on that one. They do still have some other suggestions for us. You'll find on line 45, recommendation number 3. The report specifically suggested that 10% of students in private day did not meet all the criteria for being there. It doesn't say that we could necessarily service them back in the public schools, but it just points out that fact. So this is our first foray into using CSA money to try to transition students. Now, we also worked with the ARC on this one, but they got hung up on the 12-month timeline. Our point here, Mr. Chairman, is that 12 months, after 12 months, you're not really in transition anymore. You've either determined we're going to service them in the public schools or we're going to have to have them in private day. So that is an effort to use CSA money to try to transition folks back to the public schools. Also made some adjustments from Scott Reiner at CSA there. On line 96, you'll find section F that we decided we tried to define. We define transitional services, not all inclusive, but we work with DOE to try to make sure we got that definition squared away with them. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, probably the biggest deal here is we're trying to determine should CSA money be used in the public school system. Several schools absolutely want, one of our senators wants the money to follow the student. One school system wants to bring it all back in-house, bring most of it back in-house. And so starting on line 126, actually it's 128, sir, beg your pardon. We start talking about putting this working group together because this is the biggest deal. As you all know, CSA money continues to grow. It's some sufficient. So we want to put together a work group to determine, do we move this from CSA over to the Department of Education? We named some folks, but this list is not exhaustive by any means. And then, as you go down, I want to really highlight line 140, 141, and 142. It's, 142, 143, and 144. And this statement, ensures funds for services for students with the most severe disabilities who are at risk of being placed in an out-of-school placement or are in out-of-school placement. That's where we all want to go. That we are serving the students with the most severe disabilities, likely in private day, but any student that we can service in the public schools in a less restrictive environment, that we try to do so. Now, on lines 146, 7, 8-ish, such plan will also review. This is where we try to incorporate the other senators' bills. As Senator Suderline just may have mentioned to you, several of his components are not included. But we are trying to offer a review and analysis of different models delivering special education and private day school. There's a model in the Winchester area that takes multiple school systems, puts them together to provide these services. That is along the lines of Senator Peake's possible interest, as well as the Northern Neck is another example of a place that could never go it alone. But if we could put things together, what would that look like? Okay. We also then say, including a review of specialty regional schools, in-school delivery of services by private special day programs. That's our attempt to speak to Roanoke's interest. They have done some work, I believe, with private day folks in the schools, and what would it be like to use money to maybe augment those services and or for them to bring it in-house. And then finally, in-school delivery of services by the school system. That's our attempt to have us review what Senator Stewart is interested in and what they are doing in Stafford County. So that's the way we try to incorporate my bill and include as many things as we possibly can and include the most recommendations of any of the bills from the JLARC report.
Okay. Okay, it appears, you know, and our judgment call here is supposed to be mainly directed at financial implications, and with the study that you're proposing, or the work group that you're proposing, there would not be financial implications this year.
Yeah. Yes, sir. My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I just launched into an explanation of the bill and, you know, maybe forgot I was at the Money Committee.
No, well, actually, we obviously have worked on this for years now in the broader sense as well. We don't just drop to the bottom line.
Yes,
so
sir.
We're interested in the big picture, so know your explanation.
There should be no fiscal impact, Mr. Chairman. I am the Senate rep on CSA's executive board, so I will be included in this, and will work to hold my commitments to the other senators that I've made along the way as far as including them and what they're interested in pursuing in the offseason.
Okay. Some of the bills on our docket today we viewed as fairly simple and are on a fast track for the committee meeting tomorrow morning. We viewed this as being something that was substantive, particularly in light of the interaction with Senator Sulin's bill. So we are recommending that we work through staff, and we would invite you to work with our staff over the course of the next week so that we could take it up again for final action next Monday rather than referring it to the full committee tomorrow, if that suits.
That'd be extraordinary, Mr. Chairman. The staff has just been incredible to work with and has been a great deal of work.
I don't know if we want to get into this. It's not a financial piece, but I noticed on number 7 about prohibiting the use of out-of-state funds for any private day school tuition payments to schools that are not licensed by the Virginia Department of Education, that's in Senator Mason's bill. But there's also the part about, in the case of out-of-state schools, that respective state's licensing agency. Is that appropriate to discuss here, or? Okay. I was just curious if you'd be adverse to including that.
I'm sorry, I was having a hard,
Sure.
I can't really hear what you're saying.
Yeah, in the case of out-of-state schools, would you be adverse to seeing that they're licensed by that state's licensing agency?
I would think that would fall into line with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that recommendation is a common sense one that we could have addressed a couple years ago at surplus that we really haven't been requiring licensing. And there is, that's fairly significant. Other questions or comments from members? Okay. Hearing none, is there concurrence then that we will pass this by for the day and continue to work on it?
So moved.
Okay. And the second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Mr. Mason, I would invite you to work with Mike this next week and with Senator Suderline to see if we can address some of his concerns as well.
Absolutely.
Before we come back next Monday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Thank you, and appreciate the work that you're doing. I know Stafford County, Roanoke County have been leaders in trying to get us to move forward on some different policy for quite some time, and the JLARC report has been very helpful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The time might be denied to look at it.
Let's see, do you have another bill on the?
I do, yes, sir. I have the state kinship, state-funded kinship guardian assistance program, Senate Bill 1328. And Mr. Chairman, I do have some line amendments where we just cited some of the wrong code sections.
Okay.
So, we talk all the time about how great the staff has been to work with, and we just cited the wrong ones. This is something I should have caught, and so my apologies. But so I would like to hand these amendments to the staff and have them included in the bill.
Okay. These are technical amendments, you say? Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Motion properly supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, this is Lisa on the video.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Sorry, I'm well. How are you?
Fine.
Could I ask Senator Mason or somebody there to email me the amendments so that I can get them into the system and prepared?
Absolutely. My apologies. I was working with Mr. May to take care of those, so.
Oh, okay. At David May?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will find them on our system then. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, yeah.
So,
They are in the system already?
let me see if I can.
Or rather will be in the system. They were drafted by
They
legislature?
were just drafted this afternoon, so probably are not in there, but I work with David May to get it done, so.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to upset legislative services.
No, sir. They're the only reason we're here, right, Mr. Chairman?
All right, so this particular on the, make sure I'm on the right.
So this is the this is familiar to the committee. In the federal government process, if you're going to try to do some sort of kinship care, box number 1 says, are you licensed foster parent of a child that is your relative? If the answer is no, you're out. All right? So we have tried to come up with a much more generous opportunity at the state level. The child has had to been in care for 90 days. They still have to go through background checks, still have to work through plans. So, but this is the opportunity. Foster care is not working out, or there's no permanency, to get a child more permanency option with a relative or with fictive kin. Now, last year, we started out saying about 9 kids could take advantage of this. It's 75,000. By the time I showed up with y'all, it was 1.6 million. Okay, so there you go. This year, we decided to cap it at 100, knowing full well we're not going to get to 100 between July 1 and June 30, but we hope we do. So we capped this program at 100 to work with social services and HHR to try to get it included in the next budget. We'll try to structure and stand the program up. The new budget amendment is amazing. We put $500,000 in, and when you get to that 100 kid, it's stop. Okay, we're done for the year. But this new budget amendment speaks to the cost being $477,000. Okay, yay team, with a local match. But then they start speaking to the cuts in cost if these children come out of foster care and go to a lesser dollar amount placement with relatives. So, you know, happily, that saves us $250,000, as well as savings of almost $100,000 at DSS. And so, Mr. Chairman, in a euphoric moment for us all, we're getting credit for changing the system, and the number comes out to $44,951.
So you're saying the more we spend, the less it costs us?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm almost ready to shed a tear here.
Well, actually, I reviewed the bill, and I think in the out years it grows.
Yes, sir.
And a question for Senator Howe. On the, as far as our policy moving forward this year, when we're talking about relatively small amounts, if we have consensus on it, you want us to put the clause on it, or you want to try to make a decision here?
I'm thinking with small amounts, especially when it deals with foster kids, we don't need a clause.
Okay, all right. I think that's our signal then. What's any further questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
To report.
Okay, move to recommend reporting with the technical amendments. There has been a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that will be our recommendation.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Senator Mason. Okay, let's see here what we got next. I guess we'll just go back to our list and see what we can do. Senator Keegan's happened to be on the line?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Well, very good. I think yours is simple. You want to tell us about it?
It is. Yes, Mr. Chair. It's very simple. This is Senate Bill 1147, and it's simply a bill to add CNAs to an existing scholarship for nurses. This was a recommendation that came out of the work study from last regular session about nursing home recruitment and retention for nurses, and there's a current scholarship that the Board of Nursing oversees, and it's for registered nurses and LPNs. So this Senate Bill 1147 simply expands that scholarship to be offered to CNAs as well. And there was a question from one of your committee members earlier today just about the cost of CNA training. And it takes about 2 to 3 months on average, and about $1,000 for a person off the street to walk into one of the medical colleges or institutes around Virginia and to be trained as a CNA. So the budget ask for this bill is about $100,000, which would hopefully train about 100 more CNAs in the state of Virginia.
Okay. And our determination on this bill is there would be no fiscal impact, additional fiscal impact, if we were to make this change. Questions or comments from members?
Well, I mean, there would be no fiscal impact if we don't put money in, is basically, I think, what it said. And if you don't put money in, you don't get certified nurse assistants, coming out. So
How is it drafted? Will it be will the money still, the same pot of money be divided between more people? Is that what would happen?
That's right, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so, yeah, there's currently $65,000 appropriated for the program. So they, and right now the nurses get about $2,000 apiece. So they use all $65,000. So in and of itself, it doesn't have a fiscal impact, but if you just add this group and you don't add any money, then they may not get anything.
Okay.
And the applications already exceed the number of people that receive
Okay.
the
So it
money.
seems like it would be in order to expand the eligibility pool, and then we would address whether or not we fund it more adequately in budget deliberations. Senator Howell,
That makes sense to me, but I was going to say, since their cost of education is only $1,000 and they would be getting $2,000 per, in the ideal world, if there was enough money in the program, perhaps we should put a amendment that theirs is limited to $1,000.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I mean, just picking up on that, I mean, it seems to me that we need to balance sort of what we're doing as it relates to the nurses who are getting, it's oversubscribed, so there are a lot of nurses who apply but don't get reimbursement. And those who do get $2,000, where I'm sure the cost is substantially higher than that. So the question then is, do we reduce the number of nurses? Do we just try to add money to it and figure out how much that would be? And do we fully fund if it's roughly running $1,000? Or do we say fund half of it, do $500, and the individual would have to come up with $500 or something like that? So we need, because if we do, say that we did 25,000, then you'd only have 25 CNAs added at $1,000 a person statewide, and that's not what we want. We need to increase the number of CNAs much more than that.
Mr. Chair,
okay. Yes. Senator McCollum.
I think the level of detail that we are going into right now in this debate is something that probably the board should determine, because the way this statute is written, it leaves it to the board to develop criteria and regulations to administer and implement. I mean, we might tell them to develop a different amount, but I don't know that we want to prescribe in state code the level of detail about how much you would pay. I think that is something left to the regulations after public comment with all of the relevant stakeholders.
Okay. Yeah,
Mr. Chair, I don't think we need to obviously put it in the state code, but if we pass the bill, then what we could do is put it into the budget as to where we want to go for right now, and that way we can be flexible and adjust that over time if we want to.
Okay, well, I have two different opinions here. I think you were suggesting that the code would allow them flexibility to divvy it up as they think is most appropriate, and you want to be more prescriptive? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it would seem to me that right now that would behoove us to try to figure out what we want to get out of this program if we're going to be expanding it into CNAs, and what do we not want to do negatively to the nurses who are already, some of whom are benefiting to at least a modest extent, with the current program. But I think part of what we're looking at here is how do we increase the number of CNAs significantly, which is a critical issue right now.
Okay.
And which may be, and as we start the process in May of increasing the minimum wage, we're going to find other things that they could then go to. So I think that it's particularly important to try to address that issue right now.
Okay. All right. It would seem to me then that both of you all are right, that, I mean, with the statute, with the statute, we don't want to be too prescriptive.
Right.
But then as we consider in the budget, and particularly if we add additional money, we may want to give some guidance as far as what our goal is.
Right, right.
Okay. All right, further comments? All right, what's the pleasure of the committee as far as the recommendation? Okay, is there a second? Second.
Yeah.
Motion properly supported that the bill, that is Senate Bill 1147, did we put in, we didn't need amendments on this, it was just a simple language addition there, be recommended for reporting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Senator Kiggin.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you may still want to work with us as we consider this in the budget as far as your budget amendment and potentially how we may want to direct some of the additional money if we put any additional money in the budget. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Donovan, you're up next with Senate Bill 1185.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 1185 is an attempt to chip away at the ever-frustrating issue of auxiliary grants and how we are not able to fund them as much as we would very much like to. So when I heard a particularly retching story of a challenging assisted living facility in the greater Richmond area, I thought I was going to be able to limit the expense of making an investment in some of those assisted living facilities that have 50% or more of their slots filled by auxiliary grants. To my surprise, 1/4 of our ALFs in Virginia have 50% or more of these incredibly underpaid supports for individuals. They're basically charity organizations that are doing the work until we can step up and help them. So that is the bill as it presents in full disclosure. I know that this committee is deeply committed to this issue. I know that there are other bills that are on the agenda this year. My goal is simply to help these elderly people survive in these centers where they are supporting them. And so, I am absolutely fine if my bill is rolled into some of your other efforts. If you find this language where we start isolating out 25% that maybe have the most egregious weight because they have so many AGs, I'm absolutely supportive of that. But that is, a different way to look at the same problem we all have anxiety about.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Donovan. And I think you are correct that we all, I think, are sensing the need to increase the auxiliary grant, and we would be struggling a little bit with any particular methodology for that. Other members have comments or questions on that?
Mr. Chair?
Well, I was just going to ask if Mike knows, are there any study groups currently going on that either are dealing with this or potentially we could add it to what they're doing?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Howell, so Senator Spruill has a resolution to direct the Joint Commission on Healthcare to look at the AG grant program, as well as to look at like Medicaid waivers and things of that nature, because some states actually do use Medicaid as a vehicle to provide assistance to ALF. So that's kind of a broader study that incorporates the AG grant. I'd have to check to see where it is in the process. It may still be in rules, but he does have that.
Mr. Chairman, it just seems like the way to go because the number is so big with the 25 million. We're going to have to sort of massage this and get some recommendations.
Okay.
Or we could maybe just refer it to the Commission on Health. I mean, maybe it doesn't have to get rolled in with anything.
Senator Barker?
A couple of things. The Joint Commission on Healthcare did look at this issue about 4 years or so ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Part of what was incredibly stark was that what the analysis showed was that the rates being paid for the auxiliary grant program are less than 30% of what it costs to provide the care. And so it's not even in the same ballpark there. So it's something that the Joint Commission on Healthcare could do. There are a couple of things that were just recently adopted as the work plan for 2021 for the Joint Commission on Healthcare, but Senator Donovan and I are both, on that and, can try to help move some things along if we put some language in to do that. And I did also submit a budget amendment trying to propose a significant increase this year and saying, and, with the intent of then following that up with something that's to direct a plan to be developed to figure out how you get to where you need to be. But part of what's happening right now with the whole auxiliary grant program is we spend less money every year than we did the previous year because the rate payments are so low that a lot of the providers are dropping out of the program or limiting the number of people that they take in.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up.
Senator Donovan?
We also made a very good decision, I think not long ago, to allow supportive housing to benefit from auxiliary grants. But we have a lot of silos here. We've worked really hard on supportive housing for years. Right. The need is still enormous. I think there's maybe an opportunity for Virginia to look at how housing should work if we're going to support housing, especially for those with diagnoses or elderly. And it's got to be probably supportive housing. These are all in different silos. Some are run through Medicaid, some are run through DBHDS, and some through this auxiliary grant program. So just in your infinite wisdom, when y'all are solving problems in your bubble, if you could solve that one.
Yeah. Well, this one, I think we have a consensus that we need to do something, and I certainly, knowing that and it's been highlighted by Commissioner Land recently, and I'm totally supportive of spending additional dollars in the auxiliary grants if we can pull people out of our mental health hospitals and get them into a more appropriate setting, which I think would be assisted living facilities.
And that's linking that supportive housing with the auxiliary grants. Yeah.
And so I'm inclined, I know we're not in a posture to recommend passage right now. I'm inclined just to kind of leave it on our docket for right now and see if we can figure out a way, because I would like to, I know there's a budget amendment in, I'm not sure who has it. Do you have that, Senator Barker? To increase the auxiliary grant. I don't know how much we'll be able to afford, but maybe somehow we can tie it together
I am
and do
happy
something
to work through the budget amendment. Yes.
More substantive this year. If we could afford it, Senator Howe, I'd like for us to do something this year as opposed to putting it off if we could put some more money out there, because I think it would pay big dividends if we could. So if you don't have an objection, we'll just leave it on our docket for now.
Sir, no, I'm grateful for that disposition. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Donovan. Senator Favola, are you online? Do you see Senator Favola out there? No.
I'll troll for her as I walk through.
Okay. Senator Boysko, are you online? Or she's outdoors? Out there? Senator Boysko? Okay. Senator Boysko has Senate Bill 1227. Yes, 2B. Yeah, okay. Senator Boysko. Well, first the numerical sequence is 1227. You want to start with that one? Okay.
All righty. Members of the committee, SB 1227 provides 12 months supply of birth control for Medicaid recipients. The bill was amended in the Education and Health Committee to add the phrase "for Medicaid and FAMAS enrollees" to comply with the budget language that Governor Northam has used, which is part of his budget that we'll be voting on later in the session. In 2019, the General Assembly passed a law requiring private health insurers to provide 12 months of birth control, and this legislation with this bill extends the option to our Medicaid and FAMAS enrollee recipients. And as I said, the governor has included this funding in his budget. The agency was provided $1.5 million with $0.1 million in general funds for the support of this proposal. There are about 175,628 women aged 15 to 44 covered by Medicaid in Virginia who would have access to this. We know that a disproportionate majority of these are women of color. This is an equity bill extending access to birth control for those with the greatest difficulty finding transportation, time off from work, and funds to obtain these important supplies. And I thank the governor and our advocates who are working with me to ensure that birth control is accessible to all, including our Medicaid recipients. And I ask that you report it to the full Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Okay. Thank you. Are there questions? Senator Howe?
I'm confused by some of the write-ups I'm seeing on this that are saying that it only applies to ingested hormonal contraception as opposed to all contraception.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, that amendment was done in the committee, the Health and Education Committee. They did not want to expand to all sorts of contraception. The original bill was not as restrictive.
Okay. Sometimes we get confused on these initiatives. I think there's this as it's amended, the substitute basically would it also apply to contraceptives that basically attack a fertilized egg? Is that what we're ruling out here with this?
I think that was probably the issue in the committee.
Mm-hmm.
It was originally written as any hormonal. I think the language here, if I can just find in the original bill.
Okay, so there is fiscal impact, but it's already in the introduced budget.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, just so I understand this, because I'm old and this is a topic from years ago. So, for example, not covered would be IUDs. Would injections of under the skin implants be covered?
Madam Chair, I believe that there is already a program in place that allows for the LARCs. This was intended to be specifically for the 12-month orally ingested birth control pills.
Mr. Chair.
I might be able to help here. So when you buy the monthly pack of the pills, this, as I understand the bill, is saying you can get them all at once for the full year. IUDs aren't monthly. They're inserted usually for a year up to 5 or 10. Right. So you don't need a 12-month supply. The LARC program would just pay for insertion of the IUD. The injectables, I'm not sure how often they're done, but I do think there is a separate program for the injectables. Yeah.
Okay. I think the potential controversy has been eliminated from this, I believe, where we're at. It doesn't get into that area.
And Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, if you remember a few years ago, we allowed people to get the 12 months all at one time through the private insurance. This is just bringing parity. That's the intention here.
Okay. What was the, wait a minute, if we've got it here. Okay, it's minimal impact in the budget as well, but even though it's already in there, so I see that now. Mostly non-general fund.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
General fund. Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee?
I would move to report. Move to report.
Okay. Motion properly supported to report the bill, that is Senate Bill 1227. We would recommend reporting it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you,
Aye.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you.
And you've got Senate Bill 1321.
Yes, sir. 1321 adds new language to the Code of Virginia to provide for adoption of a child by a person with a legitimate interest to adopt that child. The bill was amended in Senate Rehab and Social Services to clarify that uses of a person with legitimate purpose is defined in the code by 20-124.1, and I'm happy to read that if you need me to. Confirmatory adoption provides confirming of an existing relationship, legalizing the responsibilities of caring for a child, benefiting the child through giving them health insurance, Social Security benefits, decision-making authority, puts the children of unmarried same-sex couples as well as other unmarried people who are raising children together, such as grandparents, on an equal footing with other children in Virginia. The confirmatory parent will share in the legal benefits and responsibilities of parenting that child. And with so many parents struggling with health issues and financial issues, including the COVID pandemic and the opioid addiction crisis, this is an additional tool providing for the security and health care of having two legal parents. The fiscal impact statement states that the bill's impact of the child welfare programs, because local departments of social services are ordered by the court to complete investigation and reports for some of these private adoptions. The family service specialist at LDSS completes the investigation and reports at the end of the adoption process and then submits that to the court prior to the final order. Family law attorneys that I've spoken with who have told me that because these are confirming existing relationships that have been in process for the child's entire life, it's unlikely that judges would need to order investigation for all of these. And so when we look at the annual cost, $84,000 in general funds and $51,000 in federal funds, and the local match of $24,000, that would suggest that every expected adoption would require one of those investigations. And as I understand, that's just not the case, because we're talking about people who've been with this child their whole life and are acting in essence as a parent already and are in the family. This is not strange, unknown people coming in and adopting a child. These are existing relationships already in that family.
Yes, Senator Dean.
I just want to make sure I've got this right. You're just talking about somebody who's in a relationship with a parent but not married to him.
That's correct, and it could be a same-sex couple. It could be a mother and her daughter who is a teenager who needs more support. It could be an aunt or an uncle or somebody who has a very close. And as we have to, in the bill, it defines conformity. The relationship, which person with legitimate interest, that's in the bill, and that shall be broadly construed and includes but is not limited to grandparents, step-grandparents, step-parents, former step-parents, blood relatives, and family members, to accommodate the best interest of the child. Such party would be intervened in a suit or otherwise properly before the court. This party with legitimate interest shall not include any person whose parental rights have been terminated by a court order, either voluntarily or involuntarily, whose interest in the child derives from or through a person whose parental rights have been terminated, including but not including to the same group of family members. If the child subsequently has been legally adopted, except where a final order of adoption is entered, who has been convicted of a violation of subsection A of 18.2-61, 18.2-63, or subsection B of 18.2-366, or an equivalent offense of another state or foreign jurisdiction when the child who is the subject of the petition was conceived as a result of such violation. So there are already protections in place to make sure that this is somebody who the child is already in a close relationship with, as I understand.
Our primary, I think, I would observe, I think in most cases this would be entirely appropriate. We're talking about $84,000 in additional costs of social services. Senator Favola, this came through your committee, and actually I voted against it, and I guess I had a concern at that time about some of the relationships when there's not a marriage are more casual than others. And if you go to the steps of legal adoption, it seems like then, and they separate, you know, you've added complications and some legal issues there.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond? And I would also, I'll defer to the patron if you're okay.
Well, I was calling it, it was your committee.
Yeah, when the committee heard it, I think the committee, based on testimony, we sort of came to the conclusion that this would provide permanency, and in many cases, since you would be going to a JDR judge, the best interest of the child would actually have an objective, trained judge making that determination. So certainly, I mean, people get divorces, you know, people move, all those things, but at the end of the day, a judge would be determining the best interest of the child, and two adults would be charged with caring for that child under a legal adoption agreement. So I view this as an opportunity for permanency, and you know, Senator, better than most, how we've been struggling to get true diversion programs in place. I mean, these are going to be children who are probably at risk of being at some point removed from the family and put into foster care. I mean, they're living in very tenuous situations. So I view Senator Boysko's bill as a step to create new family relationships that could really benefit children and give them permanency and prevent foster care placements.
Yeah, well,
That's sort of how we concluded it.
okay. Well, where's your marker at, Senator Howell, on what we pass out of here without a clause? We're talking about 84,000 here.
I think my marker is 85.
85. Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Second.
All right, the motion is, and properly supported, is to recommend to the full committee that this bill be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not going to oppose spending the money. I still have questions about the permanency of relationships. Any rate, so the bill is recommended for reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you bringing both of those bills. All right, Senator Favola, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe I only have one bill before the subcommittee.
That's correct, Senate Bill 1221.
Thank you. This bill is very straightforward. It's a bill that grants Loudoun County authority to provide public health services through a contractual arrangement with the state rather than being treated as an extension of the state. Fairfax County and Arlington County, each of those counties has a contractual relationship with the state. We don't see any difference in the way the services will be provided. There won't be necessarily additional services. There won't be a diminishment of services. And Mr. Hicks tells us that there really is no fiscal impact because nothing is going to change except the legal arrangement between the state and the county, but the services and other things will not change. I do hope you have the latest fiscal impact because it says no.
Right.
It says no fiscal impact.
I haven't observed any problems with that. Any amendments needed? It's just simple, straightforward. Any questions on this one, Senator Barker?
Well, just to follow up on that, if anything, the fiscal impact will be a lessening of responsibility at the state level, so it'll actually save the state some money. But it may cost Loudoun County some money. But as long as they're asking to pay their own money to help support some of this stuff, that's their decision to make on this. And I would comment that given that this is put in by Senator Favola, and that the two existing jurisdictions, health departments in the entire state that have this flexibility are in Arlington and Fairfax, we could call this the Favola trifecta. So she represents all three jurisdictions that would be independent of the state. So,
Okay. So you have a motion to report?
With that, I will make a motion to report. So.
Okay. Is there a second? Motion properly supported to recommend reporting Senate Bill 1221. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Senator McPike, are you online? Okay, let's look at his. No. Okay, Mike, you got a, he's not out there, is it? This one's pretty simple, I think. You want to explain this one to us?
I don't know if it's simple, but Senator McPike, he's very familiar with it. But essentially, what it's intending to do is, essentially, if you recall back from the special session and the passing of the bill related to the Marcus Alert legislation and the idea of like focusing the crisis system to try to respond, as opposed to always law enforcement. So back in October, Congress passed a bill that basically is moving toward creation of the 988 system, which is a number that you can call. It's kind of like a replacement for the National Suicide Hotline. So it would become a suicide and crisis hotline. So it'd be broader. And so basically the legislation has states working toward that. So I think what Senator McPike's idea here is to actually take the previous work from the special session and all the efforts with the crisis system, and I know he's worked with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services on this as well, to evolve their crisis center into ultimately the 988 system, which I think it would be about at least a year, probably 2 years away before that would, it would convert over to that. So part of the bill, though, is actually to increase the fees for the wireless E911 fee, which is charging your cell phone, and there's also the prepaid fee. So one of them increases it from 75 cents to 94 cents, a 19-cent increase. And the other, for the prepaid, increases it from 50 cents to, I think it's 64 cents in the prepaid wireless phones. So that money goes, some of it goes into this fund. I think about 10 million of it for the crisis, to kind of support that crisis system going forward. And then the other 7 million, I believe, goes to support 911 centers in the state and their efforts to implement this as well. Senator McPike can do much better justice to this than I can because he's been in great detail. I think Connor's on the line too from Legislative Services, and Connor's helped to work on that issue as well. So,
Okay. You online, Connor?
Actually, you're just stuck with me today.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad to be stuck with you, Lisa. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. But I think Mike explained the bill, and I've talked to Connor about it as well over the course of drafting, and I think Mike captured its intent and what it does.
Okay. Has anyone on staff done an analysis of this additional fee and how those monies would flow? I have no idea how much money. Well, 17 million it says here, doesn't it?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, it should generate 17 million in revenue per year. And like I said, I believe I think it's 10.4 million goes to this new crisis center fund to support the crisis center. And like I said, the remaining 7 million actually goes to the existing E911 fund, which basically goes to support 911 centers.
Okay. Those of you on education and health, was this fully vetted there? Yeah. Was it? So, oh, you had it in subcommittee as well? Okay, so it has been vetted well as far as the actual program. So are we clear that the program is a good program, something that we should raise money to support? Okay. Are y'all comfortable then recommend reporting this one without requiring Senator McPike to come tomorrow morning, or yeah. Okay. All right. The further discussion on this one then. What's the pleasure of the committee? Move to report. Motion properly supported to report Bill, Senate Bill 1302, which was referred to us from the Education Committee. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommend reporting signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we recommend reporting that one as well. I believe that clears the docket. Is that correct? Okay. Any member have any further comments or business to bring up from the subcommittee proceedings? Hearing none, I think next week we haven't laid out a specific plan at this point, but we perhaps will be hearing from other interested parties, I guess. We have any agencies left to report to us that, Mike, you feel like we need to? bring in?
Mr. Chairman, no.
No?
No, we've already covered the big ones. So.
Okay, okay. Senator Howell, do you have anything? Yeah. All right. No further business. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.